Hello, and welcome back to the Modeling Success in Action podcast. I'm your host, Jessica, and today I am joined by fellow hypnotist, Kristyn Livermore. So, Kristyn is the director of Westend Hypnosis, and she used to feel overwhelmed, stuck, and unhappy until hypnosis helped her lose 50 pounds, rebuild her confidence, and transform her life. Now she helps others do the same by teaching them how to create real life change from the inside out. Welcome, Kristyn.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so great to have you here. Kristyn and I know each other through the Master Hypnotist Society. I'm sure that some of you who've been listening along the way have heard me drop that a couple times, but it's been really kind of wonderful getting to grow alongside and build our clinics together. So I'm really happy to have you on the show today.
Yeah, and it's such a good point because it's so nice to have like a community.
Hmm. Yeah, it really is, especially to get, feedback and checks and balances.
Yes. Yeah, and that comfort of actually getting feedback because I don't know if many people have that, in their friend group or the people that they work with even. So it's a really comforting thing that everyone comes from like this loving place and they can read you, which is kind of
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. And the loving place thing is like the real key too, because a lot of people, when we're growing up or the friend groups we have or the families, maybe they're well-meaning, but it's not necessarily coming from this like loving, non-judgmental place. And we can't really trust the feedback that we're getting all the time. Or maybe we've, never had that really kind of open-hearted space where we can feel free to get, maybe some feedback that's not exactly what we want to hear, but trust that it really is in our best interest.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. So, I I'm hoping that you can share with us a little bit about your experience, your journey, because I know that we have been in this community together, but you started your journey a little bit before I did with the Master Hypnotist Society, and so I don't know where the beginnings are. So teach me what it's been like for you to have hypnosis come into your life.
Yeah. Hypnosis was like a game changer for me. Um, Previous to hypnosis, I had been in a lot of talk therapy and I really victimized myself. And, even when I was in talk therapy, I didn't even realize that like I had all these insecurities. And I actually, you talk about confidence, but actually feeling confident is totally different. So after I had my children, I put on about 100 pounds. And then I was like, oh, wow. So, like, this uncomfortable, low self esteem, low self acceptance is like actually showing on my outside now, which was really crappy. So that's when I reached out for help. And that's when I became a client of a hypnotist. And I was like, wow, this stuff's really cool. And it wasn't all of like, I had done 100 yo-yo diets and tried everything. And I really was looking for a quick fix before because I was so uncomfortable. And then as I was going through hypnosis and having a program in hypnosis, I was I, like things started changing and it started becoming like just a way of life, which was like this beautiful place. Like um it wasn't a fad, it was actually a way of living, which I had never experienced before. So I was like, oh, this is cool. And I actually went to hypnosis for sleep and building confidence. It actually wasn't weight loss. And I got all these benefits. And I never wanted to leave because of the feeling. And like we talked about at the beginning of having this feedback, where before I took feedback as like a stab in the heart. Like it was really, really hard. I remember even, and as you're talking about feedback too in this community, when when I was 100 pounds overweight and really low self-esteem, I didn't even see the value people were giving me in feedback, although it was coming from a loving place, but I had all these anchors and insecurities that were about me and not the other person. So really that's like I feel like hypnosis like was throwing me the life vest when I was drowning in the water.
Right. And it really, you're right. It changes your whole perspective on life. So it's like, it becomes this lifestyle because it just like, it's the way you look at things now, right? It's the way you interact with things now. The whole paradigm shifts, right? It's like, everything got flipped on its head and, you could put it back if you wanted to, but it's so much better this way, right?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
didn't even know that there was other options before. Like I was so focused of how my life was. I was like, no, this is just how life is. This is how I'm supposed to be based on my upbringing or based on my life circumstances. And it was so much more freeing to know I had options.
Hmm. Yeah. It's so interesting because it's like, every human body has the ability to lose weight, right? If put under the right circumstances, like the human body has the ability to do it. And so when people go, well, I'm just, this is just how I am, or this is how I'm supposed to be, or I just can't lose weight. And you're like, you're a human.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a really good point because sometimes I remember at the beginning, I didn't think I could either. Right? I was like, no, and I attached being a mom with like, oh, you're not allowed to be attractive, which was like an anchor. I had to collapse. I had to move through because that wasn't the case at all. Because I was just viewing these moms that were like miserable and overworked and overwhelmed. And I wasn't actually seeing the other side of moms who were like hot and fit and, still had it.
Yeah.
So it
So
was
you
cool.
were grouping yourself when and like modeling this momhood that was not so useful for your outcomes.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 And pre-family and kids, like I was hot. I had it. And I was just focusing on models that weren't useful for where I really wanted to be.
Hmm. So then when you say your original outcome was sleep, self-confidence, and you're mentioning the ripple effects. So how did you start to notice it rippling into the other areas of your life? What changed? What shifted?
Yeah, I noticed that I wasn't coping with stress in the same way. So I was being taught all these tools of how to cope with stress. And then all of a sudden I was like, huh, I'm not opening the fridge every time I'm stressed out. So it was just something that appeared in my lap. And it's funny because even a couple of weeks ago, my husband went away for on a trip to Arizona. And when he wasn't home, I wasn't going downstairs and watching TV. I was actually like, reading a book in bed and enjoying my time in our master bedroom. But then when he got home, I went back to that old habit of going downstairs and binge watching TV just because I was uncomfortable with vulnerability again. And it was like an old anchor that was popping up. And I was like, oh, wow, I don't have to do this. And I called Robbie for feedback and got some feedback from her. And she's like, no, it doesn't have to be like this
Yeah.
anymore.
You can decide, right? But
Yeah.
it's the awareness, right? He had to go away. You had to notice, like, oh, look at this shift. Look at what else is possible,
Mhm.
right? Because that's the thing. Sometimes when you're just going along and it's the same and it's the same and it's the same, it really is like, well, this is the way, right? This is how it is. And
Yeah.
so having, a new possibility be, brought to your awareness, then you can choose it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, that awareness is key and having that human experience. Like, I could think about it and tell myself all of the stories or all of the things I want to hear. But reality is, until I had that human experience, I didn't even realize that I would go back there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then it really is an experience too. So um I was at a talk last night. Maybe you were there too. I was online. Maybe you were in person. But Robbie, our mentor, she was running a class on stress management, and she at the beginning just lays the foundation for what hypnosis is, and it gets me every time when she bites the lemon, and I do this too. Hypnosis is all about suggestion, right? And it is the experience, right? Like a physiological, like everyone's going, oh, well, it's happening in your mind, but it's happening in your body too, right? It's happening in your nervous system. Your breath changes. The hormones are like the things that are being fired off are changing because of the thoughts that are happening. So when you watch her bite this lemon, and she really, oh, it's who goes around biting lemons, right? Dentists everywhere are like screaming, "Don't do it!" but but as she does it, you can literally, and as I'm saying this, I can feel like my glands are salivating here. I'm starting to pucker in the sides of my, just thinking about having this juicy sour piece of lemon in my mouth, and that's an experience, right? That's a physiological experience that's happening. And when we're using hypnosis, right, we're having these different experiences. And until you've experienced something in real life, it's hard to imagine that it could even be possible,
Mhm.
right? So facilitating these experiences, so you are able to give yourself these experiences at this point, but how are you bringing this into your practice? How do you create experiences for people? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, and I love it, and as you're talking about that lemon, I'm going along with you, right? Like I'm like, yep, I feel it. Which is so interesting, and it's also really interesting, like every time we do a training, and we both go to a lot of the trainings, and it reminds me over and over again how important that human experience is. And sometimes I can get lost in details, and that's but I can also pull myself back up and have the human experience. And there's almost like little touch points that I can notice. Like I have certain things in my room that'll kind of move me in a different direction if I go down that hole again.
Mm.
And really focusing on the person in front of me, just even focusing with my clients. And I love doing this with my kids too, because they're really fun to have experiences with.
Yes.
And you can see it on their face when they're like, huh, what are you talking about? Like they're thinking about it, right? Instead of actually like embodying the experience or going back to a time when they had that experience.
Mhm.
You can almost like contrast the two versions of it and how different it is.
Yeah.
And, and I'm sure you see this with your own clients and even as students, like the difference between having an experience and talking about it is way different.
Yeah, right.
Way
Even the difference between my description of the lemon and, having that, and then actually if you went to your kitchen and sliced one open and went for it, it would be, totally different. And, kids, I love that you were, mentioned kids, because what I was realizing recently is like all the play that the children are doing, like all of these silly, like, like think about, blowing bubbles in a glass of milk. Right. And like, I feel like this is like a universal thing. Like, I feel like you give a kid a glass of milk with a straw in it and they're going to blow bubbles. And it's because they're discovering, like, the viscosity of that liquid, right? They're going, oh, like what's happening here? This is so interesting or neat. Or, when they're hanging a spoon on the end of their nose, or like they're playing with physics, right? They're playing with, science, and they don't even realize, because they're just having these experiences to teach them things, to learn, to discover. And it's so important to our development. And then all of a sudden when we become adults, we just kind of stop
Mhm,
and we go, well, this is how it is now.
mhm.
And like the experimentation almost stops, and the experiences, they become very internal. So many of us talk in our heads all day long and make up these stories, and then give ourselves internal experiences, right? Stress or overwhelm or whatever, because of this talking. So how do you help people get out of that?
Yeah. Yeah, and as you're saying that, it's funny because even, with my kids when they have the human experience and sometimes it's not always the best human experience, but it's something they had to learn on their own. Have you ever seen that movie when that guy, I think it's A Christmas Story, and he puts his tongue on the pole?
Yeah. Yes. Ralphie.
Yeah, right. And he gets it stuck, but how many times do your parents tell you like don't put your tongue on something that's cold, right?
Mhm.
And one of my kids actually did that. He put his tongue on the pole. And I was like, "Well, you did it. Are you going to do it again?" No.
Right? Yes. Sometimes
Yeah,
you
but
have to touch the hot stove. Sometimes you just have to like let yourself get burned, literally, so that
yeah.
you don't want to do it again.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's really how I guide my clients in it too. Like, hey, you could keep doing this the same way over and over and again. I tend to go back to that visual. Have you ever seen that visual of Donald Duck and he hits his head against the wall over and over and over? I'm like,
Yeah.
that's pretty much what you're doing right
Yeah.
now.
Hmm. Yeah. A
And
little
then
bit
they
of,
see it and they can laugh with it too, right? Like even when we laugh, we're changing our physiology, we're changing our mood, our energy, and like even with like that's been a huge shift with me for feedback. If I can laugh at the feedback and be like, oh, there I go again,
mhm.
it feels a little bit more safe and a little bit more free to change. And as I'm changing this in myself, I'm modeling this for my clients. And one of the biggest feedbacks that I've got from my clients most recently is you create a space that feels safe enough to change. And that's really, really important for me because as a rule follower, a rule follower and more so a security person as well, I love freedom, but I also need to feel super safe to be able to push my freedom boundary, to really step into freedom. And I'm getting into that practice now that it's becoming more automatic. So I have the flexibility to try things on and I have the room and I'm modeling that for my clients and I'm showing them that like, hey, we're all human.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It has to be totally okay to be a messy human, right? So even if something's going sideways in a session, that is good for the client too, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, I think it really kind of comes back to that loving and open-hearted, non-judgmental, being like, you know what? It's all good here, and we're just doing what we need to do to grow,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I came from a very, judgmental family, so it was really hard, like, I was super judgmental on myself, and, it's interesting because 'cause I've even seen my family shift with me too. The more that I model for them how to laugh at things or to be a bit more flexible about things, and it was funny because I married my husband who's completely different than me, although he came from a very judgmental family too, but he was really good at this. Really, really good, and I was somewhat resentful when I first met him. I'm like, "Why does everyone like you so much?" And then I realized I could learn a lot from him. Like he did. He was really cool at, taking feedback and just kinda like juggling with it. It was cool.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
funny. Why does everyone like you so much?
I know. Why don't I just model you and maybe people will be the
And then
same,
people will like me too. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Though it's true though, right? So, I mean, luckily you loved him and you were in a relationship with him and you were willing to, set your, kind of initial judgment aside to kind of get curious about it. But
Mhm.
when we're, just bumping into regular humans, it's often hard to want to model things that we're feeling jealous or resentful of, right? And we're going, oh, right. And then we want to get into the judgment and poke holes and, why it's bad that they're doing what they're doing instead of just getting curious about, well, what would happen if I did it too?
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How could I get a slice of that pie?
Right? And actually,
Yeah.
like, value what they're doing well at it because obviously they're doing something well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, people who are naturally fit and slender, they aren't going to the fridge every time they're hungry. They're doing something else, or every time they're, stressed out, rather. Yeah. They do go when they're hungry, but not for other reasons, right? It's just because of the hunger. It's not because of stress or, boredom. They're paying attention to the real feedback from their bodies, right?
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
you do have a point of like, sometimes, and this is something I had to actually have a human experience of as well, is my mind kept telling me I was hungry, but I wasn't. I was either thirsty or needed to move my body or needed some fresh air. So, just because your body is telling you you're hungry doesn't mean it's just that one option.
Mhm.
And I really had to explore those options and which gives me so much more freedom with my clients to explore options too. Because I
Right.
can see, you can see it.
Yeah, because you start to realize that there's subtleties in this, like the impulses that are being sent to you. Because originally it's just kind of like your brain's going, "I'm uncomfortable," and before it was like a blanket solution. It's like anytime we're uncomfortable, food, right? And it's like, well, no, it's like I slept poorly, I'm exhausted, right? Or I haven't stood up all day, I've been sitting in front of the screen, or I haven't gone outside, right? And starting to learn what those signals are telling you. Those are little experiences too. And then you
Yeah,
experiment.
totally. And
Yeah.
I think our medical system isn't always checking in with those things first. Right? Like, are we getting sleep? Are we drinking enough water? Are we fueling our bodies with foods that actually make us feel good? And that's what I love about this world and our hypnosis community is you're checking in with those things first.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, when we change our physiology, we can change like our mental state, right? And vice versa. If we change the mental state, it can help to shift the physiological response, right? Yeah. It's a I feel like a more holistic kind of view of the person. Um, yeah. when we're
Yeah.
looking at the root cause, like what's really going on here, right? And
Mhm.
that's the same for, all kinds of things, not even just when it comes to weight loss. If we take, a smoker or somebody with poor sleep, for example, right? There's some other mechanism that they're trying to satisfy that's keeping that, unuseful habit going,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, actually, one of the biggest shifts in myself was I was able to ease the pressure on myself. Because before I would get in this overwhelm of, wanting to do it. Like I was such a big people pleaser. I wanted to do it the way everyone else wanted it to be done. And I was just getting overwhelmed in that. And then I was looking to food to like ease that feeling. And and now, even a simple thing that I teach my clients, like turn down the volume of the pressure. I do that all the time for myself, all the time. And it's just something so subtle, but it's just like that human experience. And really, when we talk about stop smoking, weight loss, building confidence, it is really just easing the pressure and having the human experience.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, we're all putting pressure on ourselves somewhere. What are we trying to prove, right?
Mhm.
And and how much, pain are we willing to endure to prove that thing? Right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness. You could die on this hill if you really wanted to, right? But
Yeah. Or
yeah.
you could do
Yeah.
it a different way, right? And
Yeah.
when you're in that overwhelm and stress and even that victim mentality, you don't see a way out. And I think the cool thing is even in that place, you can validate where you are and know that you have options when you're ready to get out.
Yes. Exactly. It
Mhm.
it is it's true. It's kind of like, when we're able to level with ourselves, it's the floating up above it, right? It's the being able to acknowledge and accept, okay, this is the situation and what are the options for moving out of it, right? Because otherwise it's like this is the situation and I'm here and I'm stuck here, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm pissed off right now. Well, of course I should be. And then we could just like you could be pissed off for 40 years, you know? You could. Right? It's true. Right? Some people, I mean, I'm sure you've met them, that they come in and they've got this story and they've been telling this victim story for, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, right? Something happened along the way. And instead of going, okay, yep, and accepting it and going, what needs to happen so that I can make it as good as it possibly can be for me, they went, yeah, okay, well, this is the way it is. And they just dug their heels in,
Mhm.
right? So it's that leveling piece. So what was it like for you to start to level?
Oh, wow. Okay. So at first, when I first leveled, it was terrifying,
Yeah.
absolutely terrifying. But then I realized that I was making it way bigger of a deal than it actually was. And everyone was going through very similar things in their own way. And then when I actually moved through it and gave myself the space to move through it, it was like, it was this huge hill at first. And then it was just like a little speed bump. And now leveling becomes way more automatic. Um, even when I'm in a hormone cycle or, I haven't had enough sleep, I can level with myself even to say that. Like, hey, you didn't have a great sleep last night. Like the kids were up, they had nightmares, or my kids are going through hockey tryouts right now. And, even leveling about that, being like, wow, this is a toll on my family and seeing the whole picture.
Mhm.
Before I used to be like, oh, it's just right here. I'm just focusing on right here, but forget about the rest of it.
Yeah. And then when you can see the whole picture, then you can, give, some compassion and forgiveness where it's due, right? Be easy on yourself. Realize, no, you don't actually hate your whole family. You're just exhausted, right?
Have you been in my head?
But it's true though, right? Because and you're right, especially, when it's like the hormones are getting involved, right? Being able to level about that and go, okay, no, I just need to be real, like I just need to go slow today and not push myself, right? Or yeah, and even being able to kind of come back because I know for me, sometimes something will just come out and I have a reaction or I have a response and then I can look back on it, 5 minutes later and go, oh, ah. And then you're going back to, for me, it's like go back to the husband and go, I'm sorry. Yeah. today's just one of those days, and I'm gonna try and do better, and here we go, right? And laugh at it, and
Yeah.
be able to move on, because we're all human, and it has to be okay to be messy, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
actually, Jessica, you gave me a brilliant idea because I actually just got a little frustrated with my husband this morning. Over, I packed one of my kids' lunches and it was actually in the wrong lunchbox. And I'm the week before. And I was like, oh, that's it. I'm walking out. So, and just like giving, even in conversation, you can see where the leveling can happen, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it. And after this, I'm going to send my husband a message and say, hey, I'm a little off right now. Sorry about that. I walked away.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
thank you for that.
Awesome. Right? We're leveling, we're making changes right now, right? And
Yeah.
being able to start to see, okay, well, what needs to happen next, right? Like what would be the thing to make this, and I always say, as good as it possibly can be, because sometimes it's just a little bit shitty, but you can make it a little less shitty, right? Like you can do what you can to make things even outside of our control a little bit more tolerable, even if it's just shifting our own perspective on them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, like, leveling as a whole, like, if that's one thing every human being could be okay with and get better at, that would change lives. Just leveling. And, like, yeah, it just, I feel like we kind of spin in all those other directions and we do the best we can with the tools that we have. But just even, those four coping strategies that we go through and we rotate through, like, we spin our tires
Yeah.
and it's exhausting.
And the leveling makes it so much faster to just do what you need to do and save your time, save your energy, enjoy more of life, right? It really is like the good stuff, even though, it might stink a little bit, to get through it. But when you're on the other side, it's, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then you kind of enjoy the process of moving through it too. You're like, okay, like this could be fun. Like I can move through things and be proud of myself at the end of the day and show myself that I can move through it.
Yeah, right. It's even like, that made me think of, a really good workout that it kind of hurts so good, right? Like it's burning a little bit, but you know that at the end there's going to be those endorphins and you're going to feel so good and so proud of yourself for having made yourself stronger, right? For having gotten through it, having proven it to yourself that you could even, bear that challenge, right? If that's not, the definition of maturity, right? Being able to tolerate those, frustrated desires, right? Even if you wanted to quit and go, oh, I just want to lay down and have a milkshake, right? You just allowing yourself to move through it. So, is there anything you want to leave the listeners with today on how they can start to allow themselves to level or catch themselves, or even begin to model what you've been able to do for yourself here?
Yeah, I would be really, really, I would even level with the fact that there's no such thing as the end. Like, there's no end game to any of this, right? Like, even on my journey of weight loss, I lost those 50 pounds. And then, I did the hypnosis program again with myself alongside some of my clients, and I lost another 10 pounds. So, like, it's also surrendering in to life. And I think the beautiful thing about hypnosis, and I have done a lot of other things, a lot of other modalities. And the beautiful thing about hypnosis is it truly gives you space to have your own experience with the tools that your hypnotist is giving you. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I don't ever see myself leaving this world because of that.
Yeah. I mean, I love my job, right? We have the best job in the world. It's
Yeah.
and it's like a really well kept secret, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Don't tell anyone, Jessica.
Yeah. No.
Keep
No,
it for us.
it's true, right? We are handing people the tools to empower themselves to make those changes that they want to be making in life, and it can be an incredible thing, right? And once you realize, hey, it can work here, you get curious and go, where else could it work? Right? If I can lower my stress, how can I also improve my relationships and get better at networking and like go and, do all kinds of really amazing, incredible things. So, yes, that's awesome. All right, Kristyn. So it was really fantastic having you on here. For anybody who wants to get in touch with her, I'm going to leave all of her details below in the captions so you can, find her on Instagram and her website and LinkedIn as well. So all of that's going to be there. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it here. Remember, everyone, take the time to pay attention, have that awareness, level with yourself, and that's what's going to help you get to the other side. And the other side's going to keep coming again and again and again.
You might as well have fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Bye bye, everyone.